This is the Let'sRun.com Track Talk podcast.
Yes, as James Earl Jones just said, well, actually, as a sick Weldon Johnson just said, this is the Let's Run Track Talk podcast, and this is your fearless host, Let'sRun.com co-founder Robert Johnson. I will be joined by my sick brother shortly, and as always, by our ace staff writer, Jonathan Galt. But what a week we have for you today on the second to last podcast of the year. And we've got a lot to talk about. Nothing bigger than, of course, the Foot Locker Cross Country Championships, where dreams became reality for one of you. One of our very own, folks. That's right, one of you. The loyal listeners of Let'sRun.com's podcast won the Foot Locker National Championships. We'll be talking about that, and also a victory for Poland at Foot Lockers. We're going to also talk about the upcoming 2020 Boston Marathon. Des Linden will be going for the double, the Olympic Trials Boston double. Hopefully triple if she makes the Olympics. Our race of the decade is down to the final 8. We're going to talk about that. Some controversy, a couple races that I have been taken out that I'm not happy about. All of that and more, including, sadly, the death of one of the all sports all-time greats. 3-time Olympic champion Peter Snell has died. We're going to have on a guest at the end of the podcast. Hayden Sherman, the host of the Kiwi Running Show podcast, will be on to talk about Peter Snell's death. Guys, welcome to the show. Where do you want to begin?
I think let's just start with Snell briefly. I mean, we'll get into it. I had a conversation with Hayden Sherman, as you said, Robert, and we'll play that a little later. But just got to pay respect. This guy, absolute titan of the sport. 3 Olympic titles. He's the last man to win the 800 and the 1500 at the same Olympics. He did that in 1964 in Tokyo. He also won the 800 back in 1960 in the Rome Olympics. And those, Robert, you pointed this out in the week that was. You had a nice remembrance of him. That meet, you had first 2 rounds were on August 31st, then there was a day of rest, and then the second 2 rounds were on September 2nd. So you had 4 races in 3 days with 2 races per day and 1 rest day. So, and that was just one of his many accomplishments. Huge impact on the training, with being coached by Arthur Lydiard and sort of spreading that gospel. Just a titan of the sport passing away.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to listen to that interview because, for me, it was... I don't know. I mean, John Kellogg was our mentor, and he was a huge disciple of Arthur Lydiard. And Snell actually spent most of his adult life in Dallas, Texas, where Weldon and I are from. And when he died, I was thinking, like, why didn't we ever meet this guy, a 3-time Olympic champion? I mean, I guess part of the reason why he moved to the U.S. was so that he wouldn't, have a lot of fame surrounding him. But I was pleased to learn this week that our mentor, John Kellogg, did speak to Peter Snell several times, but it was really interesting to me, John, that also he spent a lot of his life, like Arthur Lydiard learned this long distance stuff, run more than an hour, run a lot of miles. He learned that sort of by trial and error, but then Peter Snell spent most of his professional life sort of trying to figure out the science behind that and why did this work, and pretty interesting on that front.
Yeah, I mean, I always find it interesting how coaches sort of settle on their philosophy. Are they... Because most coaches aren't scientists. I mean, they do study exercise science. I think a lot of them know generally what's going on in the body, but they don't, I don't think they're all just approaching training from a strict scientific standpoint. They're saying, hey, look, we've had success in this in the past. This might help this system. But yeah, I think a lot of good coaching like this, it sort of gets proven out maybe later by the research as opposed to them driving training because of the research. Is sort of just an interesting relationship there.
I think Snell and Lydiard brought running into the modern era. Training now is sort of tangentially all sort of variants of what they introduced. And as Hayden pointed out in his interview, Snell, he still has the Kiwi record over 50 years later. I mean, the guy would be competitive today, no question in my mind, if you put him on modern tracks and the extra science that we know. And he sort of like bridged the gap from the old era to now. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? Like he retires and he's a spokesman for a tobacco company. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And then he becomes a heart researcher and exercise physiologist. It was pretty crazy. And then ultimately, the bugle sounds for us all. He essentially, I think, had a heart attack, and that's what killed him. So he got the most out of his life. We got a limited time. We're all blessed, and rest in peace, Peter. You'll be missed.
Before we get to the next segment, guys, let's hand out the Let's Run phone number and a couple of sponsor plugs. If you need to reach us, unlike Facebook, unlike Twitter, pick up the phone. 844-LETS-RUN. That's 844-538-7786. Just hit 7 for extension 7 if you want to go straight to the voicemail. Or if you want to listen, reach one of us on our cell phones, you can hit a couple prompts there too and get that as well. So 844-LETS-RUN. But guys, we need to make some money. Don't be cheapskates. Support Let's Run. If you're desperate for a Christmas gift right now, I have a way for you to give someone a nice gift and make yourself $15. Go to letsrun.com/Amazon. Letsrun.com/Amazon. Right there, you'll find a link. You can buy a $50 Amazon gift card, and they will give you a $15 gift card for free. Absolutely free. Letsrun.com/Amazon. And you'll have that. This is assuming you've never bought an Amazon gift card before. So there you have it, guys.
It's 1 week till Christmas. If you're not panicking about Christmas presents to this point, you probably should be. That's not a bad idea. Last minute, you can't think of anything. $50 gift card. So, really, get on that if you haven't already.
Yeah, but if you're panicking and you want to go big, Normatec Recovery, the Pulse 2.0, the holiday sale is still going on. Save $100. You can still get it there by Christmas. The ultimate gift for runners. It depends on how much money, how desperate you are, and how good of a runner you want to be, right? I mean, if you want to recover like the pros, Normatec Recovery.
All right, so no excuses, guys. If you haven't done your Christmas shopping or Hanukkah shopping or whatever holiday you're celebrating, or if you just want to give someone a gift because you're a nice person, plenty of options.
And after Christmas, people need to start thinking about what they're going to be training for in 2020. I've got something for people. Olympic Trials Marathon Weekend. The day after the Olympic Trials, the trials are on a Saturday. Sunday is the Publix Atlanta Marathon, Half Marathon, and 5K. Make it a great weekend. Go watch the trials, and then run the 5K, half, or marathon the next day. Should Robert and I have a match race that day? Robert, I mean, this is all in the name. They're a sponsor. Maybe we should do it, you and I.
We should, but I have professional broadcast duties. I will not be at the Olympic Marathon Trials this year, folks. Breaking news. I will be broadcasting as usual on ESPN Plus, that is, ESPN Plus. But hey, Ivy League Championships are February 29th as well. So I will be up in upstate New York at my former home, Cornell University.
Wow. Probably the Olympic Marathon Trials, it's what Let'sRun.com is about. It's how the site came about. Its birth was me training for the Olympic Marathon Trials. And Robert's not going to be there for the biggest event every 4 years in Let'sRun.com. I think maybe he should start 2020 in suspension.
I think it's only appropriate, folks. Last week in the show, we jokingly said that USATF had granted me retroactively, due to the Vaporfly technology, granted me a 2000 Olympic Trials qualifier. But I've decided to turn down that honor. I didn't earn it. I'm not an Olympic Trials qualifier, and it's just a little bit too raw to show up at the trials this year, when I came so close 19 years ago.
Well, I guess it'll just be me and Weldon then. And big weekend, actually. Not only the Olympic Trials Marathon, the Brighton against Crystal Palace in the Premier League is that weekend as well. Speaking of, we just had a showdown this week. Brighton won, Crystal Palace won. My team against Weldon's team. Well, kind of Weldon's team. He was like, wait, who are all these players? I haven't been watching them that much this year. But that's your soccer talk.
It's my team, John. I'm a Crystal Palace for lifer.
Let's get to a race that took place over the weekend, the 2019 Foot Locker Cross Country Championships. That is the high school individual championships for any international listeners we might have in the United States. And it was in San Diego, Balboa Park, and two different races, I would say. It's sort of like NXN. The women's race was very close. The men's race, not so much. Congratulations, Josh Methner, Let'sRun.com listener of Illinois, and Zofia Dudek of Poland, and who currently lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They are your champions. And I want to start with the women's race because that was really the race of the day. Dudek wins it, 16:45 for 5K as a high schooler. I don't care what course you run that on. That's incredible. And she did it. It was the fifth fastest time in Balboa Park history, and she needed to run that fast to beat Molly Stolliper, 16:46 for second place. That's the sixth fastest time in Foot Locker history at Balboa Park, and they were the fastest time since 1994. Just a phenomenal race. We had them battling back, over the last 400. Stolliper led off the big downhill. Dudek then made a strong move with about 400, little under 400 to go. Stolliper's hanging in there. It was very reminiscent to last year's race, actually, between Sydney Mascarelli and Caitlin Hart, except they were even faster this time around. And then Abby Vanderkoy, a sophomore, she ran 16:55. You'd never before in Foot Locker history had two women under 17 minutes on the Balboa Park course in the same race, and we had three on this day. So really a women's race for the ages.
Yeah, it really was a great win. I mean, Dudek, is now the 8th non-U.S. born winner of the race, the second woman not born in the U.S. to win the title. She's the European under 23,000 champion, but she's kind of come from nowhere in the sense of last year she didn't even make the Foot Locker meet or the NXN meet, and now she's the national champion. I mean, in the spring she did win the Brooks PR in the mile, so it's not like she was already one of the top talents by the spring, but really, had a fantastic, I guess if you count track and then cross country just last year, and that's at 2019 has been amazing for her. And then, one thing that was interesting to me was the Tully speed ratings. Bill Mylan creates his speed ratings, kind of like the Bayer speed ratings for horse racings, to try to compare different cross country courses. And I'm like, what's she going to get on this race? And because it was, the 5th and 6th fastest times in history, he gave her a 169, which was 6 points higher than what was at the NXN meet. So that would mean theoretically that she would have won the NXN meet by 18 points. Now, he's written in the past about how Foot Locker generally produces a higher speed rating. But, that gives us to the debate, John. Like Caitlin Toohey, she's won 3 straight NXN titles, undefeated on the year, yet Dudek gets a higher speed rating. So who do you think would have won?
Well, I mean, it really depends on what version of Caitlin Toohey you're getting. Like, this version we saw at NXN clearly wasn't Toohey. That was not her at her best. She did admit sort of the pressure was getting to her, and I don't know what else, but sometimes runners just have bad days. She had a bad day, but she's so good that she was still able to win the race. Then you look what Toohey did. She raced over the weekend as well this past weekend at the USATF Club Cross Country Championships in Lehigh, and she was racing against a lot of post-collegians and pros, and she gets second in that race, in 6K race at Lehigh, which I think that performance is probably as good of, if not better, than what Dudek produced. So really, if you're getting Caitlin Toohey at her absolute best, I'm taking Toohey, but as we saw, some people don't just look at Molly Stolliper and Taylor Hewitt. Those are runners. Taylor Hewitt ran fantastic. She almost beat Toohey at NXN, wasn't really close to Dudek at Foot Lockers, but then Molly Stolliper, she almost beat Dudek at Foot Lockers, and she wasn't close to Toohey at NXN. So it's really, there's a range of variability for every runner.
Well, you guys really should be just praising Josh Methner, our listener. But before we do that, real quickly, one thing on this. We got some feedback last week from a listener named Uncle Ollie. And Uncle Ollie wrote, the course conditions because of the weather at NXN were not ideal for running, which surely played into a factor in Caitlin Toohey's slower winning time. And I know speed ratings, they try to factor in course conditions and stuff, but is a muddy course ever going to have a super fast speed rating? You're not going to I guess you could beat someone by a lot, but I think it's an imperfect science, right? If you could handicap horse races and bet them just on speed ratings, Andy Beyer would be a rich guy. Is it Andy Beyer, the runner? How do you say his name? The Bayer Speed Ratings guy.
I think it's Bayer.
The horse racing one. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I thought you were confusing that with Bill Malin or Mylan.
Yeah, I do think it's hard because the course conditions make it a big difference. Weldon, maybe Toohey's not fantastic in the mud or doesn't like the mud as much. They're totally different course conditions, so it's hard to compare. And in the week that was, I said, look, Toohey's already run a 170 at another race. A Let'sRun.com visitor tried to create a speed rating for the USA Club Nats. He also created a 170. So, she's done over 170 several times in her past, whereas this is sort of Dudek's best career rating. So I think that the edge would go to Toohey, but I think debates like this are good for sport. I do think it's sad, though, that, the beauty of Foot Locker was everybody showed up, and now we kind of have that split between the two races. Thankfully, Methner, while he did win Foot Locker, he didn't win NXN. I don't think there's any debate as to who is the sort of boys' mythical national champion. Nico Young deserves that title. But I think we're going to have Methner on the podcast next week, so maybe we can ask him, hey, is Nico the man, or do you still deserve a shot at it?
Well, yeah, and I think that sort of shows like what we were saying, like, oh, is it possible to get a really high speed rating in the mud? Well, Nico Young crushed everyone in that race, and he got I think it was like 205 or 206, which is a very high speed rating for the boys race. So it is possible. One other thing before we heap some more praise on Josh here is Zofia Dudek. This needs to be noted on the Sunday before Foot Locker, so 6 days before the race. She was running the European Under-20 cross-country championships in Lisbon. And she finished 5th in that race, representing Poland. Comes back, stays in, flies back to Michigan, then flies across the country to San Diego. And on the Saturday, so 6 days and about 6,000 miles later, she goes out in Foot Locker and runs her best race of the season to win that race. That is a pretty impressive week for a high school athlete.
It's amazing. Can we not hear this crap about how you can't run 2 races in back-to-back weeks? I mean, come on. She just proved that you can. She did it on 2 different continents. She's just really, it's kind of an interesting story. I mean, I heard she's going to Stanford now. So her dad's an economics professor. That's why she's been in the U.S. I think she's been in the U.S. for 6 years, not 6 continuous years, but I think it was like 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, and then now 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So her dad's an economics professor at Michigan now. And she's going to be going to Stanford, so I'm sure he's pretty happy about that from an academic standpoint. But really cool story there on her front. And I want to say one other thing about the girls' race. Remember, guys, a few years ago on the website, I don't think we had the podcast regularly back then. I know I posted it on the forum. But, I've got my 3 or 4 friends that are my go-tos on this podcast. I've got my rich friend who's the money man who tells me advice about that, gives you all stock picking tips. I've got my high school expert friend, and I've also got my feminist friend who gets me out of jail whenever I talk about the transgender issue. But I'm going to go to my high school expert friend. And a few years ago, he said, look, he texted me, I think he was in the cross country, or maybe it was in the track season. He's like, Grant Fisher isn't even the best high schooler in the state of Michigan. And at the time, this was blasphemous. Grant Fisher was winning every cross-country race. He was the best boys distance talent. And he's like, Donovan Brazier's more talented. Now, 4 years later, 5 years later, Donovan Brazier's a world champion. I mean, I think that guy has been vindicated. The same guy last year texted me and he said, Marley Stahleiper is going to be better than Caitlin Toohey. So there you have it, folks. Just a little birdie told me. Person is a high school expert. I wonder if he listens to the podcast.
You forgot to say your feminist friend who worked for Hillary Clinton. That's usually how you refer to her, Robert.
Yeah, you didn't give her a full title, Robert. He just abbreviated it to feminist friend. Yeah, former Hillary Clinton speechwriter. I mean, you got to give her all the honorifics here. Just one other thing about the boys' race. It's kind of interesting. Robert, you kind of gave Methner some crap for committing to Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. I don't really know why, but I'm just saying number 1 and number 2 finishes. So Methner and Carter Solomon of Michigan, they will both be going to Notre Dame this year, and they're adding to a roster that already has Dylan Jacobs and Danny Kilray, who won 3 at Foot Lockers in 2017. They were both top 50 at NCAA Cross this year for Notre Dame. So, the Irish building something out there in South Bend.
And Methner just dominated the boys' race. He took off around halfway and never looked back. It'll be great to talk to him because I can't imagine being in a national championship and just saying, hey, yeah, I think I'm just better than everyone else. I'm going to run away from them. Robert didn't give him enough credit. I'm sure NXN was just like a regional for him, and this was the championship. That's a joke, but it's cool to have him win Foot Lockers. It's like the one thing we've never really been to. I've been to Olympics, I've been to World Championships, but Foot Locker is kind of mythical to me. Like, I wasn't good enough to even sniff getting to Foot Locker when I was in high school.
Did you ever run the regionals well then?
I think my senior year, I had to go from Texas to North Carolina, which is kind of problematic. I think I ran like the B race. Is there a B race?
Yeah, well, there's like a senior race.
Oops. I ran that. Didn't do very well. I was proud to be the number 2 man on my high school team. My teammate was trying to make it, and I think he finished like 12th in top 8 of the
12th? Oh my God, that's when 8 made it. Yeah,
he was really good. I mean, he was top
right.
10 2-mile in the country back then, which was 9:12 for 3,200, which is crazy.
Yeah, you probably have people running 9:12 that didn't even make Foot Lockers this year. Wait, Robert, did you ever run Foot Lockers?
That would be a negative.
Oh, wait. That reminds me, John. Thank you very much. last week, Robert claimed to have been the number 3 man on our high school cross country team. And I think he might have been the number 4. We may have to fact check this.
We didn't fact check. I apologize to West Alaska. Of course, I was number 4.
Wow.
I wasn't. That's not even debatable. I was never as good as Wes as a senior. I had some injury problems, folks.
Well, last week you claimed. You're making all these claims, and if you're going to run for mayor of Baltimore, we got to get this stuff. Good thing we're catching this early.
Yeah, wow, this is a Paul Ryan situation here. Robert exposed by Let'sRun.com.
In case you guys don't know what we're referring to, Paul Ryan, former presidential candidate, lied, exaggerated about his marathon time. And that's one of the ways we actually hired Eric, our web guy, made a website. It was called Paul Ryan Marathon. And you put in your marathon time, and it'll quickly spit out an adjusted Paul Ryan time. And when we were asking for help, we just posted in the forums, we want some help from some web guys. And Eric's I have no formal experience. I just love programming on the side. Here's what I've done. And however many years later, he's still working for us. So that's...
Wow.
Well, what year was that? 2012?
2012. I never knew that. Maybe he just had access to the Vaporflies before everyone knew about it and artificially bumped up his time. That's funny.
Speaking of the Vaporflies, folks, I have some breaking news. It's time for our weekly Vaporfly segment. And late last night, I got an email. I don't know if you guys were CC'd on this or not. I think it came from Costa Rica. Every year, folks, we do our Let'sRun.com end of the year rankings. And every year we sort of let Let's Run super visitor David Graham, who's a doctor, I believe, in Costa Rica. He writes the marathon rankings. We often just use those and put a few comments below it. Does an amazing job. But I have breaking news. He sent me an email entitled No Marathon Rankings This Year. This email is incredible, folks. I'm going to read it in its entirety. I have no marathon rankings to offer this year. I do not, because times are a part of what to take into consideration when valuing one athlete's results over another. Not just for the current year, but for comparison with historical controls. Since all marathon times among the elite have been artificially boosted by shoe technology, I cannot compare current marks with others run before 2016. The time before the Vaporfly. BV, he says. Lots of results after 2016 have left me suspicious. I remember first raising an eyebrow while watching the Dubai Marathon in early 2018. We're late in the race, not 1 or 2, but rather 7 men were in pack on a pace to run 2:04. All of them did it, with the top 5 breaking the course record. The lone Adidas athlete, Tamarat Tola, seemed frustrated to have broken his own course record from the year before, but nevertheless to have finished third. After the race, as I read the results from road race after road race last year and this year, my suspicions mounted about the shoe technology advantage, not just at the marathon level, but at 10K, 15K, and half marathons. The breaking point finally occurred the second week in October of this year. Still reeling from the news of the 37-year-old Kenny B's shocking 2:01 in Berlin and Eliud Kipchoge's sub-2 performance in Vienna. That race revealed how much pacing in the shoes helped. But are we really going to believe that even though Haile Gebrselassie had slightly superior times to Kipchoge from 1,500 meters to the half marathon, that Kipchoge is nevertheless capable of running over 4 minutes faster than Geb in the marathon? Yet it wasn't that broke me. It was Bridget Kosgei's world record the next day that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Paula Radcliffe's Babynesque world record had been untouchable for 16 years, with no one getting within a minute of it. Yet Kosgei, without aiming for it, not only broke the record, but did so by a whopping 81 seconds. With that, I threw in the towel and admitted that neither Santa nor today's marathon times are real.
Wow, that's heartbreaking to hear from David. Yeah, beloved reader and opiner on the marathon. I feel bad that that's the way he thinks about it, but I gotta kind of disagree with him. I mean, yes, the Vaporflies have changed the marathon, and it has sort of changed what we think of as fast times, but that's been changing for a while. Gebrselassie, I don't think people would compare his times to Bibi Bikila and expect them to be exactly the same. There are some technological advancements. Obviously, the Vaporflies have sort of hopped everything in a time machine and moved them way forward. But to me, one of the biggest appeals, and this came up actually in a Twitter debate this morning about our race of the decade, Ross Tucker was shocked. He's like, I can't believe that the 2018 Berlin Marathon, where Eliud Kipchoge broke the world record, ran 2:01:39, beat out the 2010 Chicago Marathon with Sergei Kabede and Sammy Wanjiro just throwing haymakers at each other the last couple of miles. And he's like, look, it should be about the racing, and people are going crazy about the times. And I think, to me, that shows you can still appreciate a great race. Just because two runners are wearing Vaporflies and running faster than before, you can still have a great battle to the finish, as we saw this year in Boston or this year in Chicago with the finishes there on the men's side. Yeah, you can still have great racing. Yeah, the times, okay, maybe the times don't mean as much as they did in the past, but it doesn't. I still am excited to see these guys race. I'm still excited if Bekele lines up against Kipchoge in London next year, which, spoiler alert, Eliud Kipchoge will be defending his title, as it was just announced. I'm still going to be super excited for that race. And yeah, the times, we're going to need additional context to figure it out, but it's still going to be a great race.
But John, you're missing the big point. Kipchoge and Bekele both are Nike athletes, and it's an unlevel playing field, and something needs to be done. I think it might have been the same Twitter debate, and I wish I could credit this person. Maybe we can find the tweet and put it in the show notes. And someone's like, well, technology's always changed. They used to race on cinder tracks. The spikes aren't what they once were. And this person said, yeah, but everybody raced on a cinder track at the same time. Mm-hmm. And now they don't. Like, some people have a shoe. Some people have the version of the next shoe. Some sort of basic rules need to be put in place. And I applaud David Graham for saying, look, I can't make sense of this. And last year, I think when Bekele ran 2:01:39, at the time, we were all like, oh my God, unbelievable. This guy's so great. And I remember thinking, like, wait. Let's just wait. Let's make sure this wasn't the shoes. And this guy was...
Kipchoge, you mean?
Excuse me, Kipchoge, right.
Yeah.
And then Bekele came back and ran 2:01:41 this year. And we're like, okay, so the shoes are a huge component of this.
But no, that's a little unfair. Like, it's not just... Kipchoge's the GOAT. I know he has the shoes, but... Oh, I guess... do you disagree, Weldon? This guy, I think, to me, with the weight rate he's winning, and he's beating other people in Vaporflies... He's clearly the best marathoner of all time. I don't think it's open to discussion. Do you disagree? You think he's just the best because he has better shoes?
He never loses. So that was one thing you pointed out. He deserves credit. I think he's like, 10 of 11 now, or 11 of 12, whatever the number is. So, yes, he's the greatest marathoner ever. But he also now usually has one version of the shoe ahead of everyone else. At the London Olympics, only like 3 or 4 people had the shoes. He was one of them. And at the Berlin...
And he kicked their asses.
Right, he won, but the rest of the field didn't have them. At Berlin Marathon, when he set the world record, he had the next year's version's prototype. No one else had those shoes. When he broke sub-2 in the exhibition thing, forget about ignoring the pacing, he had the next version of the shoe that no one else has. So he races at the Olympics, at the very least, he better be wearing a shoe that everyone else can run in.
Look, I am as I've been on this Vaporfly thing more than probably anybody. But I don't necessarily have a problem with what's going on now. You can go out and buy a pair of shoe of Vaporflies. Now, you can't buy what he wore in the sub-2 thing. But I don't want to disparage Eliud Kipchoge. Of course, he's the greatest. I mean, for the most part, these pros all have access to these shoes now in the last year. And that's why you see the numbers skyrocketing. I mean, I have the stats in the week that was, but it's pretty amazing. Like, just look at this year. The most number of sub-2:30 marathons ever in the history before the Vaporflies come out was 208. This year it's 324. That's up 55.8% from the all-time high.
This is by women, to clarify.
Yes. For the men's stats, I was looking at the number of sub-2 to 10 marathons. The record before the Vaporflies was 221. This year it's 294. That's a 33% increase. And you have similar stats for sub-210 marathons for the men. Sub-210s, the record in any given year was sub-205 marathons, in any given year was 11 in 2012. This year we've had 17. That's up 54%. So it's made a huge difference. But Kipchoge, before the Vaporflies even were invented, was amazing. I mean, 2013 won Hamburg, second in Berlin, Rotterdam, Chicago the next year, London and Berlin the next year after that. And then, so, he won 5 or 6 marathons before these even came out, which no one else does. So, but there's no doubt anymore with these stats, that I got the idea of going that in depth from Tony Revis, so shout out to him. But it's just like, in the last year, it's become crystal clear how big of a deal it has and what a huge impact this technology has had on the game. So I'm not really opposed to it. As John Kellogg said, we want better shoes. We've got them. That's fine. If we're going to stick with them, that's fine, but we need to figure out a way for everybody to have them, which I guess they could just go out and buy them. Or if we want to get rid of them, like the swimming did with the swimsuits, I don't have a problem with that either. But to act like Kipchoge is by far the greatest marathoner ever, by far, he's been World Athlete of the Year 2 years in a row. I'm not even convinced that his world record is that much better than it's not that much better than anyone else has run. 2:01:39 is only 2 seconds better than what Bekele ran this year. And I'm not convinced it's that much better than what Gebre Selassie, those guys ran back in the day.
Well, okay, but here are a couple points in Elliott's defense. One, 2015 Berlin Marathon, remember that race? He ran 2:04 flat, which is 1 second slower than Gebre Selassie's PR. He did that with the frickin' soles of his shoes flapping in the wind behind him. That is one. I still doesn't make any sense to me. I was like, he probably would have had a shot to break the world record that year if he didn't have that and was running in constant pain the whole time. So that to me is ridiculous. The other thing about Bekele, his dominance, it's not just that he blows people away, because he doesn't always just blow people away from the gun or from the halfway. Just like winning Kipchoge. Time after time, Kipchoge. Race after race, time after time. We've never seen this level of consistency in the marathon. Usually, before Kipchoge, if you got to be the best marathoner in the world, you win maybe. If you won 3 majors in a row, that was phenomenal. That was really hard to do. You're the best in the world. We're like, yeah, you're the best. Kipchoge has not lost since 2013. It's just, to keep winning at this rate is astounding. That's why I do think he is by far the best marathoner ever.
Yes, I agree with you on that. He is the best runner. I couldn't believe Wald was quite that negative on him. But for everybody else and for the times and the historical context, the shoes have ruined that. And can we get the music, please, for the weekly Alberto Salazar segment?
When they turn into the park, it seems like the wind might be in their face. It's Salazar.
How big of an asterisk are we putting on Rob's medal? Because I don't think Rob medals in 2016 without those shoes.
We know. You bring it up every week, Robert.
Couple points. Okay, I'm not trying to argue that Kipchoge isn't the greatest ever. I'm just saying it's hard to compare his times to anything in the past. The guy never loses. And his run with the flapping shoe was nuts. So the fact he didn't lose with a flapping shoe behind him is crazy. The only time he lost was the world record and one other time, or is it just the world record race?
Just 2013 Berlin Marathon when Wilson Kipsang set the world record.
I mean, that's crazy. Having said that, when he raced Gallardo in 2017, Gallardo wasn't wearing the shoes, and Kipchoge was, and it was a very close race. So, John, in that race, would you be open to the possibility that Gallardo might have beaten him if he had the same shoes?
Yes.
So, I think that's where we want it to be fair. We want a level playing field, and they've just said, like, anything goes, and I don't know what the solution is. Some people say that it'll self-regulate, but right now the changes are so quick. The thing I don't understand is, like, how did all these smart shoe designers never figure this out before now? We had, like, probably tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars going into shoe research, and no one figured out this pretty simple way to make a better shoe until now, a faster shoe.
You could say that about almost any invention from humankind. Right. Like, how did we not figure out this until it existed? How did we not figure out that until it existed? Like, I don't know. It takes a brilliant mind to come up with some of these inventions. I certainly would, if it was so simple, it would have come out already.
Yeah, I wonder if, like, everyone was in the minimalist thing. Maybe a Hoka, like, with the big stack heights, and then they went from there. I don't know. I found that the tweet that I was referencing, it's actually from a pro runner, Tim Tollefson, who's actually a Hoka runner. He said, at least at the time, the athletes competed on the same surface in a given race. Now you have some racing on cinder, others on grass, and the winners are on Mondo, all in the same race. So the point being, it's not exactly a level playing field, which we want it to be. So hopefully something can get put in place by the Olympics. Or we just say there will be no rules, but at least now it's not as bad as it was in the past.
My initial, and I think all of us, we like this idea of saying, like, whatever shoe is commercially available on January 1st, 2020, you can wear that in the Olympics, and then everyone can go out and buy them. The problem with that idea is a lot of these companies that are trying to mimic the Vaporfly, New Balance, Saucony, Hoka. They may probably have unreleased shoes that they're going to try to, as we said, just give to their pros. So that might be in a violation of a rule like that. So maybe, the IAAF would have to say, well, this is similar to the Vaporfly so they can use it. It would take sort of some, discretion on their part to look at the shoes and figure out, is this a different type of shoe or is it similar to the Vaporfly, that type of thing. Because, in an ideal world, you wouldn't force, a Saucony athlete to wear a pair of Nike shoes. If Saucony had a sort of unreleased prototype that was similar to them, and ideal, it'd be a little bit better.
Well, Saucony is coming. They've already said they're coming out with their shoe that Jared Ward's been racing in. That it's coming out publicly next year. They've been pretty upfront about that, I think.
Yeah, but what if it's not quite as good and he doesn't feel comfortable, wants to wear his, the Nike? I don't know. We'll see.
All right. Well, I think. Well, anything else on shoe talk, or can we let this topic die for another week?
Well, I was just more concerned about the Alberto Salazar segment. It was very short. So, once again,
give the man his due.
I always reach out to Alberto. Alberto, although you're banned from the sport, you're free to listen to the podcast and come on at any time. I will give you a segment every week. I don't think I can pay for it. We don't have quite the resources at Nike. We hope to one day, but just sort of...
Well, actually, Weldon, I wanted to mention this because we're coming out with some decade awards for Let'sRun.com. And one of the awards that you suggested was like Person of the Decade, which similar to like, the Time Person of the Year, where it's not always the best person, it's just sort of the most influential person. And one of the candidates you suggested was Alberto Salazar. And I'm kind of wondering, like, who would we... Is he deserving of this as sort of the premier coach, the rise and fall of Alberto Salazar in the 2010s? Is it whoever came up with the Vaporfly? Is it Kipchoge? Who should be the Let's Run Person of the Decade? Robert, you're raising your hand. I assume you're not nominating yourself and you actually have someone to suggest?
Well, I don't want to give it to the Vaporfly. The Irish Times has already named the Vaporfly the global sports star of 2019. I think Salazar is perfect for it. And he's perfect for the decade in the sense of like, what we've been hearing in cycling, marginal gains and all this crap. And, but Salazar represents like doing everything you possibly can to be the best, whether it's on the gray line or over the gray line or just behind it. And honestly, the Vaporfly in 2016 was over the gray line. It's tied with Nike. Salazar's tied with Nike. This all goes into Nike about just do it, baby. And, I think that he took it too far and sort of, and once you're on the wrong side now, people just pile on. I was reading it, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal today. There was some sort of, I forgot what the article was about, but it's like America is either like, they like to think of things as either you're the best and you're pure as white snow and you're the most amazing thing ever, or you're the worst and you're the devil. There's nothing really in between. It's either yay or nay. So he's unfortunately on the nay for his right now. But he would be a great candidate. I mean, who else do y'all have as options?
I don't know. Rob, you were complaining about people piling on now that he's been banned, though. Are you saying they should have piled on before he was banned, like you were doing?
Well, listening to the podcast last week, John, you piled on O.J. Simpson. You said, why would we want a building named after O.J. Simpson? Well, last time I checked, O.J. Simpson wasn't convicted.
I didn't know that O.J. was a sacred cow on this podcast. I think it's fair to pile on this guy. He's a pretty bad dude.
But it's interesting. We all assume he's a bad dude, and we all view him as a murderer. He was declared not guilty of murder.
I'm aware of what happened in the O.J. Simpson trial, Robert.
But why did we wait for... Then it's ironic because then we waited for Salazar to be convicted of doping, even though he didn't dope any real legitimate athletes. And yet...
Well, not a lot of people waited for this. A lot of people in the sport kind of...
And before that appeal is even over... We've already vilified him. So it's interesting. So if we can judge some people without a conviction, why don't we just, and that's where I was. I thought this guy's shady all along. So, but now I'm kind of like, okay, but look, he's shady. He's not necessarily Hitler.
Alberto is great in so many ways. Like, one, look what he did as a coach. And for athlete of the decade, I think you've got the distance running, it's like Farah or Kipchoge, right? Those are your options. And
for the
maybe
men.
Rudisha.
For the men, maybe Rudisha, but fine. I mean, there aren't a lot. Well, so Alberto coached them. On the women's side, the most amazing performance ever was Sifan Hassan's 10K 1500 double at Worlds this year. Alberto Salazar coached her. And then all along, you have all the allegations, all this stuff.
Centro, he coached an American to gold in the 1500. That's pretty cool.
Wait, he would coach Centro too? Like, this is nuts. It's so crazy because like in the whole 2000s, Alberta was like trying to be a good coach, and we were like, oh, this Galen Rupp kid might be pretty good, but like, holy crap, I'm not even giving him credit for Centro. So you have all of these things, amazing performances, and then the sort of downfall. It's really there. And Robert's talking about the devil and the black and white. Last week I sort of touched on these things. Salazar's Catholic faith. We probably should have a religion segment every week now. But I have a feedback from a visitor. And this is on Apple iTunes. So everybody go on there, rate us 5 stars. And this guy's comment after his 5-star rating is a true and sometimes controversial analysis of all aspects of the sport, mixed with hilarious banter by the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit of Let'sRun.com.
I love that. Wait, who's which
That's
role?
The question. Let's open this up for debate. 1-844 Let's Run. Option 7. Who's the Father? Who's the Son? Who's the Holy Spirit of Let's Run? I think. The reviewer before that said the facts might not. Rojo always bringing the heat. The facts might not be facts. The logic might not be logical, but the takes are always hot. So I'm going with Robert for the Spirit, the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, I think Weldon Father. Weldon's about to be a father in real life. I'm the Son, and Robert is the Holy Spirit. I think that's has to be the assignment of roles.
Wow. I need to take my father role more seriously. I guess I'm God, and John is Jesus. That's a pretty big role to play. And is Jesus God? Let's get there next.
Weldon needs to be the father, I thought, but sometimes also I think that I kind of am the son that's being reprimanded by John. So, anyways. One last thing about Salazar. Weldon talked about how in the 2000s he didn't have anybody good, and then all of a sudden, this 2010 to 2020, he's coaching the most dominant winners ever. To me, what's interesting was he was tinkering with all this crap for a long time. The L-carnitine and the water treadmills and all this stuff. And then I've heard now sort of that he actually learned from some of that, and now he doesn't, and supplements, and now he doesn't wasn't giving at the end, he wasn't giving his runners any supplements except for maybe iron, and was just sort of trying to just coach them. And I guess he realized hey, none of that crap matters. It's kind of like Peter Snell. Peter Snell's like, get fit and then race. It's like, yeah, if you recruit the best talents from Africa, you get the best talents on your team, get them fit, they're going to dominate the world. None of that other shit is necessary when he started getting Stefan Assans and joining his team.
Well, the crazy thing to me, the L-carnitine, when he found L-carnitine, he was like, this is the most amazing substance on earth. It's legal, still legal. You can use it to boost your performance. And, he's sending them breathless text messages. Lance, I've tried it and it is amazing. Or emails. And, if it really was that amazing, every runner on earth would be using it now. Or not every runner on earth. Maybe some people view it as crossing a line. But Salazar certainly would, because, again, it's legal. It was just the way they injected it was illegal. So it's just like, was it just a fad? Did it ever actually work?
Would L-carnitine make my voice go back to normal? I might take this shit.
I don't know. Weldon, I feel like you lend this podcast an air of professionalism with sort of the deeper voice and the this is Let'sRun.com.
Well, I'm trying to take my father role to heart, so I think it's appropriate for today when I'm.
All right, guys. The other big story this week: Des Linden comes out yesterday. She, along with 7 former Boston champions, are all headed back to the Boston Marathon. But no, she is not skipping the Olympic trials. She's going to do the Olympic trials on February 29th in Atlanta, and then do Boston 51 days later, John?
It's April 20th. So, yeah, 51 days. That's right. Yeah. So I support this move. We all made the case earlier in the year for why she should run Boston. She's already made 2 Olympic teams. She's probably not going to medal this year, even if she does make the team. And she's going to get a nice fat paycheck from Boston. She loves running Boston. That's why she's doing it this time. And I really think it's a win-win for her and John Hancock, which organizes the elite field in Boston, because she gets to run the trials, which she still wants to do. And she's planning on taking a spot to Sapporo are we sure? Is it Sapporo or Sapporo? I need to get a handle on that pronunciation before the Olympics next year.
Whoa, John, as a beer drinker, I'm kind of shocked you don't know that. Sapporo.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know the pronunciation of every bit, but I have had a Sapporo, I believe, in the past. Anyway, so yeah, she's still going to go to Sapporo if she makes the team, but Boston, it's not too close to the Olympics that would really affect her ability to run both races. And I think even if she's not at 100% or if she has a hard time rebounding from it, John Hancock and the BAA, they're not going to mind that she's coming in at less than 100%. They can still use her to promote it. You get the shots of her running through Hopkinton, all that sort of stuff. That's all great. Des gets a kick out of it. I don't see that, all right. Do her chances to win go down? Yes, I would say so, but her chances to win weren't great anyway. So I think I don't see who's the loser in this situation. I think it works out well for everyone.
I think about 5 or 10 years ago, this might have bothered me. I used to think, they're in it for the money. Now that I'm a father myself and more worried about money than when I was in my 20s and didn't care about money, like, who cares if they're worried about money? So, and one thing, I was very impressed by her race in New York. I saw her attacking that race with passion. I'm like, this woman's not just in it for the money. She's got a drive. She thrives on it. She still loves it. So I've got no problems with it. And I've got to give a shout out to Rachel Bachman of the Wall Street Journal. She's got an article on this today. And she reminded us, I forgot, 2011, Meb ran New York. And then it was a little bit more time. 69 days later, he got second in the trials and made the Olympic team. So I remember at the time thinking, Meb's in it for the money. Well, he made both. So you said she's not going to medal. Probably not going to medal, John. No, she's not going to medal. And no, she's not going to win Boston. That being said, somehow she did win Boston in the past. So it's kind of weird.
And she got second. She almost won Boston twice. She finished second by 2 seconds, Robert.
So I discount her. I love her. I'm afraid she's like listening to the podcast. She's going to come kick my ass. But like I talk about an asterisk with Rupp's medal, like two guys. Well, I'm going to ask Weldon this. Weldon, do you know what her time was when she won the Boston Marathon?
Well, then no Googling.
I thought you were going to started to say like 2:37. I think you wrote about it recently. I think it's like 2:37.
2:39.
54, Weldon.
She won by 4 minutes as well. You got to give her credit for that.
I mean, the woman behind, it's almost like there was no winner. Like, what if everyone had dropped out of the race and some 6-hour marathoner won it?
I mean, Des is like the ethos of Let's Run, where your dreams become reality. Because I would give her like no chance of winning Boston, and she's almost won it twice. It's crazy. She's not winning Boston again. I'll say that, but I didn't think she would almost
We said Meb wouldn't win Boston.
Right,
She's
exactly.
younger than Meb was when he won.
It's so great. Okay, yes or no, is she on the 2020 Olympic team?
Oh, man.
Well, I don't even need much analysis. I'm just saying yes. Before this field was really deep, I feel like people are hurt and injured. Shalane's not running. I'm trying to think who else has been hurt. I don't know. I guess you got Huddle and Sisson, but Hasey's been hurt. So who else is going to beat her?
Yeah, I think the Hasey thing had I didn't realize how serious her injury was, and said she was back to running fairly quickly, but it didn't seem good. I think she's sort of an injury risk at this point, and then you've got Huddle and Sisson, and I think after that it's probably then Amy Cragg. Who the hell? How healthy is Amy Cragg? I think she's also an injury risk. Like, right now, I would say she's on Lyndon's on the team, but check back in 2 months, I might think differently. I don't know. It's going to be such a great race of the trials.
John's always big on pronunciations. Is it Cragg or Craig? I never thought about it, but it's sort of spelled like
Cragg, like the aggro Cragg, and you guys probably too. That's after your time in Guts, Nickelodeon. You got
me, John.
They had this big mountain they had to climb. It was called the Aggro Crag, and I think it's the same thing.
When we're talking about O.J. Simpson, is Josh Smethner thinking it's like, I don't know, when I hear somebody talk about, I have no idea.
Well, the O.J. Simpson trial, I was like 4 years old when it was happening. So Josh, he would have been like, oh my God, he's like 18 now. It would have been like 15 years before he was born.
Wow.
Wow.
So you have no memories. My wife barely remembers it. It was just effing awesome. I won't tell you where I was because I was a little bit older than 4.
Yeah, that's... No, well, I know it would have seemed... Could you imagine living through it on Twitter? I think my brain would have exploded.
Yo, talking about O.J. Simpson, I was looking up the U.S. Marathon stats. I remember where I was. Well, we had to run a running workout. It was in the summer. And the thing went on all day, and we kept deciding when to do the workout. We were going to wait for the whole thing to come to its climax. And then we decided, this keeps going. So we warmed up, and then turned it on again on the radio, and then...
Yeah, no, I totally remember. That wasn't the verdict. I think that was the chase.
That was the chase, yeah.
The chase, like we were watching live on TV. We had to do a workout. We went up at night and we're like listening on all the radio stations were chronicling OJ driving through LA. I was thinking we were streaming it. Like the internet didn't even exist in, which is nuts.
It was during the NBA Finals, Knicks Rockets. It was like one of the most surreal events that ever happened. Like they cut into the NBA Finals to show this car chase. I don't know. Yeah, if you haven't, we're probably preaching to the choir, a lot of people right now. But if you don't know anything about the O.J. Simpson case, you need to like go on, watch Ezra Edelman's like 6-hour documentary on it. It was one of the most insane things ever. Robert, we didn't give an answer though. Is Des Linden on the 2020 Olympic team?
I was trying to get all my big key players in there. John once again left out Kellen Taylor, but we got Sarah Hall at 2:22.16, Emily Sisson 2:23, Amy Craig, Des Linden. Des Linden only the 6th fastest American this year. Molly Huddle. I'm gonna say yes. I don't know who she's gonna. I mean, she's
here's
just
the
more
thing about
consistent
Des.
than the other people.
That's the thing, exactly.
Huddle has not impressed me recently at the marathon. Craig hasn't done anything in a couple of years. What are the odds she's going to be healthy? Hesse, same thing. So then that just leaves, I mean, I'm most confident, Sisson, but Sisson wasn't good this year in the track. So if she runs a solid effort, it's probably second or third. She's going to need these 3 other women to run an A effort to beat them, and I'm not convinced there's 3 other women that are going to run an A effort to beat them. To beat her.
Right. I think she just shows up. You know you're going to get a good, strong race from Des. She's not going to do anything to beat herself tactically. And she knows how to make these teams. She will be the first woman ever to make 3 Olympic marathon teams.
In some ways, it's kind of like this Foot Locker race of this week. Like, okay, we know Des is going to go out and run a 170 speed rating. And, are there 3 other women that can run a 172 or 1 or 3 to beat her? Yeah, Sarah Hall on her best day, once in her life, has run a 2:22 marathon. Let's see that again, Sarah.
Projo throwing down the gauntlet to Sarah Hall. All right, guys, I think that's going to conclude our sort of running news of the week segment. And now we're going to get to our interview with Hayden Shearman of the Kiwi Running Show podcast, and reminisce a little bit about Peter Snell. Hayden's got some good stories, gives us sort of the reaction in his native New Zealand. And then after that, we'll come back, talk a little bit about message board threads of the week. We'll talk about the Race of the Decade bracket and a couple other fun things before we wrap up and get to the holidays. So here he is, Hayden Shearman. All right, and now I am joined by Hayden Shearman. He is the host of the Kiwi Running Show podcast. He's coming to me from the other side of the world in New Zealand, where it's probably somewhat warm spring day right now, as opposed to snow on the ground in Boston, where I am. And we're talking a rather sad occasion. It's the death of Peter Snell, all-time running legend, 3-time Olympic champion, multiple world record holder in the mile and the 800 meters. He died last week at his home in Dallas. And the running world's been paying our respects, and we figured who better to talk to than a Kiwi. So Hayden, what's the vibe like in New Zealand right now with the passing of a legend?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a shock on Saturday to wake up to that news. And I mean, sort of selfishly, one of the reasons we started the podcast was like we want to interview a lot of those legends from Lydiard's age, and Snell was definitely right up there on our list. But obviously, being based in Dallas, it's been a bit hard to connect with him. But yeah, it's as far as the local media goes, he's been front page news ever since. So the last sort of 5 days, which is in a rugby mad country, that shows the gravity that he's had as an athlete. And so he was our athlete of the century in the 20th century. And when you consider, rugby is essentially the national religion here, the All Blacks are the heroes. For him to outbid all those guys for that title of athlete of the century is amazing. So certainly it's been cool to have lots of reflection on who he is and sort of remind Kiwis of the legacy that he left in the black singlet. But So there's mixed emotions of sort of celebration, remembering what he did, and obviously sadness.
He's one of those guys I knew he was really, really good, but it wasn't until he sort of dies and you start looking at all the accomplishments, or at least for me in the States, I'm looking at what he's done. I'm like, oh my God, some of the stuff he did in his career was just exceptional. I mean, if you look, 1960 Olympics, he wins the gold. They had to run 4 rounds back then. The first 2 rounds were on the first day. They had 1 day of rest, and the second day was the semi and final on the same day. I mean, that to me is crazy. And then he breaks the world record in the 800 meters. He smashed it, 1.4 seconds on a grass track in Christchurch. That record wasn't beaten for 11 years. I mean, just some of the stuff, and then winning the 800 and the 1500. No one's done that at the same Olympics since, and it's been over 50 years since Tokyo 1964. I mean, were you
amazing.
Did that strike you too, or did you always know like this guy's just the stuff he did was ridiculous?
Totally. I mean, it was definitely, he's been the number one in people's minds. I remember just last week actually having a chat with a running mate. Who's the GOAT? Who's the New Zealand GOAT? And for every runner in New Zealand, Peter Snell's right up there. John Walker's in the list as well. And people often throw out Nick Willis as well, just, longevity and competing in a different era. But, Peter Snell, when you rattle off those accomplishments, and even in Tokyo, he had 6 races over 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch those replays of those 2 finals, it's like he was in another league, especially in the 1500. Just coasts, with 300 to go. Okay, guys, I'll see you at the finish line. Just switches on the afterburners and crushes it. And I think the other thing that stands out to my mind is that 800 meter record is still the New Zealand national record.
Yeah, that's insane.
And up until last year was the area record, so the Oceania, so that includes Australia and the Pacific Islands. But the fact that up until last year, not even an Australian or a Kiwi had broken it. And I mean, right now we've got a couple of 147, maybe 146 guys, but like no one's come close to 140. What was it? 144.3.
Yeah,
on grass, which I think is still the fastest time ever on grass. I assume they measured it right, but when you watch the replay of that race, it's he's so far ahead, goes through in 51 and holds on to break the 880 yards and the 800 meter record.
Yeah. No, I'd advise anyone listening to sort of just go on YouTube, type in Peter Snell, and just start digging around, because like you said, some of his races, like the Tokyo 1500, he won that by 1.5 seconds, and all of it came in like the last 200. I can't remember a more dominating move in an Olympic 1500 final. And then some of this other stuff, I mean, the 800, actually, the one thing that also impressed me, though, was his patience in the Rome final in 1960, because I was watching that one as well. That actually reminded me of Nick Willis, because Willis, when he medaled at Rio, he waited a long time, and finally something opened up, and the same thing. Snell was like horribly boxed in on the final turn, and then waits for this running lane to open up, and then suddenly he's coming up, and he's right on the shoulder of the world record holder from Belgium, Roger Moens, and pulls the upset.
Yeah, amazing. And I watched it just the other day, and likewise, I definitely thought Nick Willis, like he was on the right on the inside, boxed in, and you're just like screaming at the TV set, like, come on, get out of there. But and at that time he was absolute no name. He was this young kid from the other side of the world who had done nothing up to that point, aside from Lydiard training, running in the hills out the back of Auckland, and and I guess, like, for me, like, a slight change of tangent, but for me the big thing that stands out is the butterfly effect that he's had in the world of running, and especially here in New Zealand. Like, if Snell wasn't in that Lydiard group, which was based on mileage and volume for a big part of the year, but he came in with all this raw speed. So when it switched to the hill phase and then the interval track speed phase, he was able to bring that speed to the table, which lifted the likes of Murray Helberg and Barry McGee and the other John Davies, who got third in that 1500 in Tokyo as well. So I do wonder what what that butterfly effect was to lift that group, lift Lydiard's legacy, and then go on to, the teenagers back home in New Zealand watching that 1964 Olympics with the likes of John Walker and Rod Dixon, Dick Quacks. And so in the 70s, they took up that mantle of running in the black singlet and basically started a running revolution in a rugby-mad country here in New Zealand. So it's and I don't think I'd be running now. I sort of was reflecting on it back in my coach was influenced by that Lydiard era, that era of idolizing Snell, and then he convinced me to get into running. So yeah, the flow-on effects are huge, and I'm sure there's a lot of people around the world similar to, say, someone like Steve Prefontaine or every country, I guess, has got their hero, but certainly Snell was that in New Zealand.
Yeah, no, I think, you said the impact he had on you as, a runner in New Zealand and New Zealand runners, but I think his impact was global in terms of the Lydiard system, and it wasn't just him, it was the other guys, Halberg and them who were running with Lydiard, but that model of training was not widely known. It was sort of revolutionary at the time, and now it's sort of the staple of a lot of modern endurance training. I know one of my favorite running books is Running with the Buffaloes. That was one of the first running books I read, and it's about the University of Colorado cross-country team in the United States. And so in the introduction of that book, they're talking about the Lydiard way, and that sort of influenced Mark Wetmore, who's gone on to become coach of Emma. He was coach of Emma Coburn when she medaled at the Olympics, and then coach of Jenny Simpson when and all she's done in the 1500. And obviously, he's won a lot of cross country titles in the US, and he's just one of the guys who's been influenced by just by this system that Snell really helped popularize and showed that it worked.
Yeah, and when you look at someone like Snell, he was 5'10", but he was 80 kg. So I don't know what that's in pounds for all our American listeners, but it's heavy I'm 5'10", and if I'm over 70, I know that I'm in the heavier range for race weight. So
it's about 176 pounds. I just did the conversion, which is pretty heavy for a distance runner.
Yeah, so and it just shows like that he had that background of aerobic fitness and that engine. So you add that to, he had great wheels. I think when Lydiard met him, when he was sort of 17, 18, he was like, look, you've got the speed to be a world beater. And so add the aerobic engine to that speed, that natural speed, and voila, there you go. You've got a champion.
Yeah, no, I think I was reading like some articles about him, and that was basically the thing, was how He essentially said, look, the speed component is mostly genetic. Like, you can train it, you can work on your speed, but you need to have a base level of sort of fast twitch fibers to be able to run that fast and to close hard. But the aerobic component, you can really, train that over a long period of years, and that's really what they did and helped him get the strength to go through these rounds. But what I find very interesting is the current world champion, Donovan Brazier, in the 800 meters, he does essentially the opposite. He does very, very little mileage at all. I think his longest run of his entire life is about 8.1 miles or something. And
I thought you were going to say like 820 meters.
No, but I mean, honestly, I don't know how long the intervals he does or what his tempo runs are, but they're not long at all. That's why one of the reasons I think the 800 is such a great event, because you've got guys like Snell who could be one of the all-time greats, and he's running 100 miles a week in the base building periods, and he's doing a ton of mileage and all these hills. And then you got Brazier, who is essentially just a pure speed guy with the great natural endurance base. It's a great crossover event.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like looking around, I'm a coach here in New Zealand, and looking around at the way that we coach, especially young athletes in New Zealand, I think we've probably missed a bit of a trick with the 800. We've looked at Snell and said, oh, well, that's just the way that you do it. That's the way that. But he came into it. He was a very up there tennis player. That people have said that he could have been an international representative for tennis up to age 19. And so you come into that with all that speed and power and sort of plyometric training that you get on the tennis court, and then you cross that over into running. So it's I do worry that we spend too long or too much focus here in New Zealand on that aerobic side and don't consider that need to build that natural speed as well. But I would love to see that national record go down at some stage. I guess we've talked on our podcast, like what national record do we want to see go down? And one of them was the marathon, Rod Dixon's marathon record. So the Robertsons have taken care of that one. But yeah, we definitely want to see that. It's a grass record. We're going to say we really want to see that one go down. So we're hoping some young kids can come through and take that one out.
But there's always an allure to me with some of these records that last so long. Like the Canadian record in the marathon stood until last year. It was set, I think, in the 70s by Jerome Drayton. And when a record keeps going for that long, I kind of never want to see it broken. I'm like, oh man, like Johnny Gray's American record, the 800, that was only broken this year. It stood for about 34 years, I think. And it was only broken this year by Brazier in the World Championship final. And I'm just thinking, all right, it's cool that Brazier got it, obviously, but part of me is like, man, how long could this thing stay there? And the fact that Snell's this grass track thing, I mean, I don't know. I think it would be awesome if it lived to be like 100 years old. You know?
Yeah, well, it's 1962, so where are we at now? 57 odd years. So it's past the half century. That's amazing.
How competitive do you think he would be like these days? I got to think, running 144.3 on grass, you know, you put that on a modern track with modern spikes, he'd have to be right up there with the very best in the world.
Absolutely, and you throw in like modern medicine and modern shoes. I didn't want to bring that topic up, but yeah, who knows? I mean, you look at his technique in those videos, and you're just like, wow, yeah, he's poetry in motion, like a Rhodesia. When you see him coming down that home straight, his beautiful style, just so much strength, chewing up the turf. So. Yeah, I'm sure he'd be super competitive these days.
Yeah, and I mean, careers were just shorter back in those days. Like he retired, I think it was basically 1960 to 1965 was sort of his major career, and then he was only 26 when he retired from the sport.
Yeah, so obviously it was the pre-professional era, and a funny story. Like towards the end of his career, he started doing work for a tobacco company here. So sort of quasi sponsorship. Doing promotional tours for them. So yeah, really interesting transition. But yeah, I think it was partly the realities of life. You got to get on and make a dollar. And partly, he's an intelligent, smart guy with ambitions elsewhere. So as many of our listeners will know, he moved to the States and ended up doing a PhD at Washington State in exercise science, and then moved down to Dallas, and it's kind of been there ever since doing research. And so he's got a career that's, I'm sure people in his world of science would talk about all of his what he's done in the world of exercise science as well. So talented man, definitely.
Yeah, it reminds me of Bannister a bit.
Yeah,
all he did after his running career. But it's interesting, the irony of him being this world-class athlete and then going on to work in human performance and exercise physiology and being sponsored by a tobacco company. I just find it's delicious.
It's not going to happen again.
Yeah. All right, but before I let you go, Hayden, any other favorite Snell stories you want to share, or anything else you want to say about the man?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few stories of particularly those early days when he was training in New Zealand, and obviously most people didn't have TVs in the late 50s, early 60s. So there was a story my dad just reminded me of the other night. He was running through the back streets of some small town and maybe doing some strides up and down the street, and an old guy goes up to him. It's like, who do you think you are? Do you think you're Peter Snell or something? and he had to convince this old guy, yeah, I am Peter Snell. And this guy wouldn't believe him. So yeah, some classic stories like that. I'm actually heading up to our first sort of opening track meet of the season here in New Zealand, and there'll be Barry McGee, who was the bronze medalist in the marathon in 1960. He's still coaching, and I'll be looking forward to picking his brain and hearing some more of those stories. So there's still a few guys around from that era, that are keeping the memories alive.
All right, well, Hayden, really appreciate you having you on and talking about Peter Snell and his legacy. And again, a huge loss for the sport, but appreciate you talking to us. And if you want to listen to more of Hayden or New Zealand Running, Kiwi Running Show podcast, check that out after you listen to the Let's Run Track Talk podcast.
Thanks so much, and really appreciate what you guys do. Keep up the great work. Best website on the planet.
Oh, you heard it. Now I knew I liked you. There we go. All right, thanks, Hayden.
Awesome. Cheers, mate.
All right, guys, that was some looking back. Now let's look forward. The race of the decade is in full swing. We are getting closer to crowning a champion. Right now, we're in the Elite Eight. Voting for the Elite Eight ends on Thursday night, the 19th of December at midnight Eastern Time. So whenever you're listening, if you're listening to it before then, get on the website and make your voice heard. We've had a lot of interesting stuff go down so far already, though. Any reactions, Robin Weldon, from the first 3 rounds, which are now?
Yeah, my bracket's busted. I guess I need to get steam up. It's like the NCAA tournament every year. You got a few upsets early on. You're doing well in your bracket, then it falls apart, and then the Final Four comes around. You get excited again. But Evan Jager's steeple in Paris is out, defeated by Emma Coburn's World Championship. I get it. Fine, great. But I love that race. So a little disappointed that it's gone. And we've had our first number 1 seed go down. The Kabeti Wanjuru race at the 2010 Chicago Marathon or something. That's why that one went down. That was an epic race, but it was too long ago. People don't remember it. Josh Methner was 9 years old when that race went on. So
all I know is this number 1 seed going out, the 2010 Chicago Marathon. That's an absolute disgrace. I logged into the computer last night. And I'm like, okay, the voting closes. I want to get my vote heard. I knew that it came down to 1 vote in one of the matchups in the first round. So I was like, I don't want to see one of my favorite races go out because of 1 vote. So I get in there, and then you vote. And you're curious as to what's it going to look like. And I saw that that race was losing to the world record race. I'm like, that's absurd. Yes, the world record seemed impressive last year. It's no longer impressive now that we know about the Vaporflies. We can't give them credit for that and the sub 2. So which is it? Either or. So I looked and I thought, okay, well, I can get into that was on Chrome. I can log in on Firefox and Safari, and then I've got a laptop. I could probably get 4 or 5 votes in without being spotted by the spam software.
Shoot, do we need to impeach Robert for meddling in this election?
Wow.
So I did vote more than once in the first round, and that was the difference in that first round matchup between 2019 Berlin versus 2018 Boston. It doesn't say only 1 vote per person.
Electoral fraud. He has committed it. He is yelling it from the rooftops, people. Indict this man.
Hey, it's just there's even more that you're going to be more outraged about. So I haven't even finished my story yet.
Thank God he doesn't know how to get in the database and change the results.
So the 2019 Berlin beat out the 2018 Boston race by 1 vote in the first round, and I voted at least twice. I was very happy about that one. But here, I was like, okay, 1 vote's not going to do it. It was several percentage points. So I thought briefly, I'm like, wait a minute. Can I take out an ad on Facebook and run it in Africa and get
this is part of the Trump playbook right now.
Run it just in Kenya, and then the Wanjuru fans will come out to the woodwork and vote for the Wanjuru race over
Kipchoge, who's also Kenyan. Brilliant strategy,
that was the problem.
Robert.
Yeah, so that's what I was worried about. I'm like, wait a minute, they're both African though, so I couldn't figure out a way to do that. So, John, it's kind of like Donald Trump. I contemplated committing a high crime misdemeanor, but I didn't actually do it. I didn't.
You can't. No one can be imprisoned for attempted murder.
I didn't do the Facebook ad, John. Trump sent that money to Ukraine. He thought about not sending it, but he sent it.
I know. Now we're gonna get. Was there a call between Robert and the Kenyan president to rig some of these votes, or he was going to withhold? We're not going to recap any Kenyan races unless you promise to vote for this race in the race of the decade bracket. This is ridiculous.
Wow, should we have a Steele dossier on Robert? Does anybody want to make up some information on Robert and send it to us? We'll read it on air next time, please.
No, I think it's interesting though. 2010 Chicago, Robert, you kind of mentioned this, and then off the air, a lot of people who are voting in these matchups, maybe they weren't huge running fans in 2010. I know I was a runner, but I didn't actually watch 2010 Chicago live. I didn't hear about it until, well after that race, whereas I did watch Berlin, the world record live, and I don't know, if you want to blame someone, blame millennials. Blame the people below the millennials who might not have the appreciation for this slugfest and are just sort of swayed by the more recent shiny performance.
Yeah, I'm going to blame a term that Tony Kornheiser said he just learned, recency bias. Just one's more recent than the other. But yeah, if Bekele had run 3 seconds faster, he'd have the world record, and we all would be voting for this race. The 2:01:39 was one of those ones. A year and a half later, it doesn't look nearly as impressive. I mean, obviously, it's the world record in the marathon, but it's not what we thought a 2:01:39 was 2 years ago. And shout out to the Great North Run, encouraging people to Twitter to vote for the race. But the only problem was the voting closed. Voting closed last night. We're doing the voting very quick, so you guys got to get in your votes for the final 8.
John, can you take a look to see, did they get enough votes in after the shout out to take the lead after the fact? We could count the hanging chads and give them the victory.
Well, like Robert trying to manipulate the votes once again, I should expect nothing less. One of the, from your bag of underhand tricks. I can look that up. But while I do, I just would like to mention, we did mention recency bias has played a factor, but in our final 8, it's not all recent. We've got 2010 Peyton Jordan, which is the earliest race on this list, and that's still in there. That was May 2010. You got the 2012 Olympic 800 final, which continues to just steamroll through everyone, and I kind of think is just going to win, and it's not going to be that close, but that's still in there. You've got the 2014 Boston Marathon. You've got two races from 2016, so the Olympic men's 800 and the Olympic trials men's 5K. You've got 2017, the women's steeplechase at Worlds, 2018 Berlin, 2019 women's world championship 400 hurdles. Those are the 8 races remaining. So it's a pretty nice mix from almost every year is represented. Though we were getting some complaints. I think Ross Tucker on Twitter said his favorite race of the 2010s was Ibrahim Jalon beating Mo Farah, upsetting him at the 2011 Worlds, and that one didn't even make it onto the list. So it was very hard to come up with that bracket. Do you guys think that was an omission?
Well, that's an omission, but speaking of omissions, I've got a bigger omission. I'm still pissed off about this one. I'm surprised there hasn't been outrage on Let's Run. Donovan Brazier's American record gold medal world championship run. How did that not make it? It's not, you're telling me that's not one of the top 64 races of the decade? He broke Johnny Gray's American record. Now, maybe the problem was we had the American category for American-only races, but that was one of the top 16 American races of the decade. But we probably were trying to slot it in the international category, I think. Yeah,
that's what we would have had to do. Here's the thing: it was phenomenal. Like the race itself, though, it was a phenomenal accomplishment by Brazier. Really fast time, broke a historic record, broke the world championship record as well, and won gold. First man to do that from America in the 800 in the World Championships. But the race itself, I kind of knew as soon as the gun went off, I'm like, I know what's going to happen here. As soon as Wesley Vasquez went to the front, I'm just like, Brazier's better than everyone. He's going to sit on Vasquez and kick. The dramatic element wasn't there, but that doesn't always matter. Like Kipchoge, we all knew Kipchoge was going to win Berlin in 2018. It's because he crushed everyone. That's what made it so impressive. So it sort of comes down to what makes it the best race. But yeah, you could argue that race, certainly there's an argument to be made it should have been there, but when you're comparing it against all the other international races, it's hard to make that cut.
I'm going to give a shout out to the Great North Run PR director. I thought about giving an extra day because we got up the votes a little bit late on Monday. It was only like a day and a half, and if you're in Britain, you're already asleep one day. You're probably asleep when this came up. You only had one day to vote. It's kind of like the first round. We screwed over the people in Asia voting. They almost got ahead. It's now a 4-vote difference, John. More than
it was. So the vote tally was they were down 51.7 to 48.3. They're now down by 50.2 to 49.8. So they did make up some of the difference, but it's too little, too late.
Hey, there's voting rules. You got to follow them.
Unless you're Robert Johnson.
No, I believe in that, and I believe in ID at the voting booth.
Hot takes. Political opinions in hour 3 coming up with Eric Westland on the ground in Iowa.
Okay.
All right, guys.
All right. Yeah, that's Race of the Decade. Shall we move on? Weldon, hit us with some message board goodness.
Well, I think we can kind of run through some top threads of the week because we can real quickly just say a few things we didn't talk about, but these threads are all sort of relevant. We kind of mentioned this. The number one thread of the last week. Tui finishes second in Pro 6K race. So this is the Club Nats. She gets second place. Impressive run. But as we said, the Club Nats is sort of like B team pros, but it shows she could be a B team pro right now.
JV pro.
JV pros.
Wait, JV, that was the term with JV runner. We sort of said anyone who's not like the gold medalist at Worlds is JV runner.
But if you're the high school national champion, I think you're not in the JV. So, it's age graded. Number 2, controversy at USATF Club Nationals. Tinman cheats.
Okay, I promised someone on the message board, if the original poster of this thread is listening, you should be ashamed of yourself. I said that I would say that publicly on air. They started a thread about whether Tinman, which is, what's the guy's last name? What's his first name,
Schwartz.
John?
Tom Schwartz.
Tom Schwartz, coach of Drew Hunter. He's got his own post-collegiate club that he's self-coaching out in Boulder. They win the Club Nationals in a dominant fashion, and someone's like, should they be disqualified for not wearing the same uniform? So I'm thinking, people are like, of course no, of course not. If you run, you win, whatever. But I'm like, well, I care if people are wearing the uniform, because imagine going to a cross-country race and everyone's just wearing a random uniform. You'd have no idea what's going on when you're standing there. It'd be impossible to watch. And since these 10-man runners are all with different sponsors, I thought like this person was implying, one was wearing a red Nike singlet, one was wearing a green Adidas singlet, etc. No, the photo is posted on like page 3. They're all wearing like identical white singlets. Most of them have an Adidas emblem in them, because most of the guys are sponsored by Adidas. There was like 1 or 2 people, including Morgan Pearson, who won the race. He had the same singlet, but instead of an Adidas emblem, he had like some triathlon. He's a triathlete sponsor, like 361 or something on there. It looked identical. They were wearing. You would have no problem if you were running that race. If you were watching that race, they were a team. Shameful post right there.
And speaking of Morgan Pearson, can we give him a shout out? This guy's a pro triathlete. He just shows up and spanks everyone at USA Club Nats. I mean, granted, it's not the elite of the elite in the U.S. distance running scene, but there's some decent guys in that race, and he's not a full-time runner. I mean, he was good in college at Colorado, All-American cross-country runner, but to go out there and win it as a triathlete, I was blown away. That was really, really good stuff.
So Tinman coaches his running side of things? I didn't realize that.
I didn't either. Apparently, I think Sam Parsons said this on Twitter, that Morgan was sort of like one of the first guys post-collegiates that he actually coached in Boulder. And then Morgan sort of made the transition to triathlon. But I don't know. I guess he trains with them sometimes, or I need to clarify this relationship. I guess as a reporter, I need to get on that. But
Morgan,
clearly he's close with them.
Morgan, a former runner at the University of Colorado, so it's not like his background wasn't in running, but super impressive to go out and win that. But if we're discounting Tuohy's second place and we're playing up his win, I don't know if that's fair. So it's the standard should apply to both. It's not the top-notch pros, but it's pretty impressive to win by a lot.
I think it's consistent. You discount Tuohy's win because it shows you that a triathlon can win this race. A triathlete can win this race. So this isn't the cream of the American pros. So to get second in it is good, but you're not beating the Carissa Schweizers of the world.
Okay, staying on Club Nationals, we'll jump to the 4th most popular thread of the week. Mary Kane sighting. Kane returns to action for first time since May. Finishes 33rd at Club Nats. 1 minute behind Tuohy.
Glad that she's racing. Results not very notable. It's not particularly good, but it's good that she's running and seems to be healthy. And hopefully we can start seeing her make some progress in indoor track. Most of all, just hope that she's enjoying the sport. Seems like she is right now.
John, I hope that she has progress if that's really what she wants. To me, though, she's not going to be an elite runner. I hope that she understands that. I don't want to see her. If she's enjoying it and loving it and likes being a voice and a leader of the women's movement, that's great. Because she does have a public profile. But if she's trying to recreate her old glory, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Over under 410 in the 1500, I'm going way over. So I don't want her chasing something that's not going to come. If her goal is to be an elite pro, I think she's making a big mistake in trying to stay running. I'd rather her go find passion in biology or become a doctor or whatever she wants. But if she's enjoying it, all for it.
Wow. I'm not sure what you mean by elite pro. 410 isn't elite, but I think the question might be, does she get back to her old PRs? I mean, she did run that. Mary Slaney sort of tailed off. I'd like someone to come back with the stats for Mary Slaney and see what she came back to do. But you guys are pretty dismissive
Well, maybe she could run 4:10, but she's not going to run under 4:05, which is what you need to do to be relevant.
I mean, you got to run under 4 pretty much to be super relevant internationally. So,
well, look at the U.S. team. Nikki Hiltz was our third best 1500 runner this year, and she ran 4:01 in Doha. Like, you have to be. Sinclair Johnson ran 4:02 this year. Kate Grace is still there. I mean, you have to be very close to 4 flat to make the Olympic team next year. So that's not going to happen for Mary Kane. But
Kane, one thing I added this the week that was, she went out very hard in this race. She was only like, I think, at halfway or whatever. Some point there's an intermediate split. She was like 8 seconds back. So she faded. So I don't think 33rd is indicative of where she would have finished if she just even paced it. But
no, so then maybe.
I think that shows her competitiveness
Keep it up,
and what
Mary.
she's trying to do. She's trying to be super elite. She still thinks of herself as a pro runner. And I think that's the one thing she's got going for her. She has immense talent. And a lot of people in that run are saying she should just focus on the 8. So, body type probably isn't important. They're like, Alberta was trying to make her a long distance runner. And then some people are like, look, why isn't she an 800 meter runner? So, Robert's favorite saying is talent doesn't go away. Now you're like, oh, talent goes away?
Unless you're a high school girl.
Good point.
Robert just stomping on dreams everywhere.
Hey, no, I would say, will your dreams become reality? Well, not really, except for Josh Methner.
All right, thread number 3, which we jumped over. Jim Walmsley's training week. Wow. Walmsley's got a lot of fans in Let's Run. I notice any thread about him is very popular. And Walmsley, what's his claim to fame? Western States course
record holder.
All right, we're see?
You're getting
John, all that
through to me.
Hoka advertising paid off. And the 50-mile world record holder, a world best holder. But he's running the Olympic marathon trials.
I thought it was American record. It was a
50-mile, yeah, but like no one really runs 50 miles abroad, so,
Okay.
But
Yeah.
big training week, and it's interesting to see how an ultra guy's attacking Olympic marathon trials. Jim couldn't got a better marathon course for an ultra runner to do the trials. Super hilly Atlanta. I mean, I'm sure Jim wishes they hadn't taken it from 4 loops to 3 loops and kept the really steep hill in there. That would have been an even better course for him. But it'd be really interesting to see what he does. Making the team, obviously a huge long shot, but I think he could surprise some people there. And number 5, Nike's ultimate irony: the cheater flies destroyed Rupp's career. What do you guys think of that? There's this idea that these shoes, it changes. There's some oscillation and stuff. Maybe it changes like the pressure in your Achilles. Like he's been hurt. Amy Craig's been hurt. But runners get hurt all the time, so I think it might be a bit simplistic now to like attribute to the shoes. But the body is not used to racing with that sort of stack height, so I think it's a valid concern.
Syracuse runner, one of the female runners in the regional, slipped on the ice because she's so high up. She had to have surgery. So
She slipped on the ice because it was icy, Robert.
Yeah, it's a different.
well, maybe blame the Vaporfly. Voyeurs, if you're looking for a suit.
I'm gonna jump down. A few weeks ago, I thought New Balance athletes are screwed. Well, New Balance doesn't sponsor really. I thought they didn't sponsor male marathoners. I mean, they're really focused on women and track.
Callum Hawkins just named to the Olympic team, 4th to the last 2 World Championships.
Okay, in the U.S., they just don't sponsor long distance running runners.
Yeah.
Men in particular. But number 9, guy wearing New Balance's prototype smashes British 40-plus marathon record. So, all you non-Nike athletes, there's hope.
All right, there's a topic that came up that's listed here. I don't know exactly. Maybe it was taken from the message boards or whatever. I think it's a fascinating one of discussion, tangentially running related. Which pro sport would you be exposed in the quickest? And that is, if you're just some random guy pulled from the street and then you're thrown into a professional sport, how quickly would you be exposed as just not being world class? I have a very strong feeling about the answers to this question. But I will throw it to you guys first. Which sport do you think is the answer here?
It's going to be major pro sport? Or can we throw track in there? I mean, track
counts. Track counts.
I mean, track really depends on the event. Some guy may be able to sprint like the first 100 of a 10K and maybe stay relevant. Track, you're going to be exposed pretty quickly. But I think that there's an obvious one for major pro sports: hockey, ice hockey. Most people can't skate.
That's a good one. I mean, my take. I see this happens all the time. It's the 100-meter dash. You see it at the Olympics when you get the heats of the universality places. So you've got people from like these random tiny places like Kiribati and, Tuvalu and Vanuatu, and I think those are all real places, that you throw them in a race and they're just immediately exposed as being horribly, horribly slow. And you know it from the gun. Like if these guys are going up against Christian Coleman, you would tell within 1 second that they don't belong there. And I think that is just the quickest way of being exposed. Maybe a hockey player you could...
It's true.
Yeah,
in terms of like absolute... Yeah, I'm like, it would take a little while. No, it would take about 2 seconds for sprinting to be exposed. Hockey, the gun might go off, whatever. The horn may sound or whatever they do. And I got to get up on my hockey now that I'm living in the Northeast. And it might take a while. You could sort of like stand there in position and act like you know what you're doing. You might get 5 seconds.
We should start a thread about just this topic, because I actually found this. This was at the bottom of a post about the Edmonton Oilers. I think it was a post asking the hypothetical: if the Edmonton Oilers held a 1 mile time trial, they want to know how many people could run like a 6-minute mile. And the message board poster AP5000 is the one who posted this. And I guess people had already discussed it. He said, "I couldn't agree more about hockey. I played for 12 years and every kid's dream of playing in the NHL. The game is so fast now, it's unbelievable." Oh, no. So this is what he said. He's the one that brought up the question. Here it is. "There was a question on a local sports talk show about which sport would you be found out in the quickest if a regular guy showed up. Evan agreed you could hide the longest in soccer because you can run around until you got to the ball, and then even then you could kick it down the pitch. Baseball, you could play right field, but then you'd be found out as soon as you swung on the pitch. Golf, it is conceivable you could play a good first hole and not be noticed. The NBA would be second fastest discovery that you're a random guy, but you could run around a bit. The fastest is hockey. You step on that ice, and in 3 seconds you'll be found out. ... And God help you if that puck finds you and you dabble around with it, inevitably with your head down, because you'll most certainly end up in the hospital. The only other one would be track and field from the 400 meters down and under. Anyways, the point is hockey's are absurdly good athletes, and I believe most people are grossly underestimating their aerobic engines and endurance. I'd be shocked if half couldn't run a 5:30 mile, 25% under. If half didn't run around 5:30, 25% around, he must have meant 75% around under 6, and the rest easily under 6:20. So pretty interesting there. I think, guys, in baseball, I think you could fake it for the whole game as long as they didn't hit the ball to you. You play right field, and then when you come up to bat, you do a couple check swings. As long as you're not scared, you got to do a couple batting practices. Hopefully,
try
you
to bunt.
Curveball at you.
Everyone,
just
even
the
pro
bunt.
players can't always
Fake
get
like
bunt
you're going to
down.
bunt. I would do a check swing, like one.
Just don't swing.
Do a couple.
They might throw a few balls.
Oh, nice eye. Walk. Maybe you walk and you fool someone. Yeah. When I played baseball and I played right field because I was terrible. And
John.
the ball never. Look, all right. Here's my defense. I moved here in 5th grade, end of 5th grade. I took up baseball in 6th grade, spring of 6th grade. At that point, all the kids have learned the fundamentals. They're not teaching the game anymore. They're just throwing you into the baseball.
Didn't you learn cricket?
And I get picked on a team. My coach doesn't know that I don't know anything about baseball. He doesn't teach me any of the fundamentals. They just throw me out there, and it's basically sink or swim. And I'm like, I don't know how to hit. I don't know how to field. I don't know how to do any of this. I don't know how to freaking slide. Like, I don't know. I'm not a good athlete, but I was very frustrated that I was at a disadvantage because I never learned any of the fundamentals of that game.
John, that's a you problem or a parenting problem? Why didn't someone go up to the coach? I'm always amazed at these questions. There's no communication in this world. Why don't you go up to the coach and say, "Hey, I'm new to this country. I don't know how to throw. Can you help to teach me the fundamentals?" Or your parents explain to the coach. Instead, you were crying quietly in your
I probably should have. I was kind of worried. I didn't want to be found out or exposed, but...
Okay, that brings us to another question. We've gotten an email this week. People want to know what Jonathan Galt's PRs are. And that inspired me with the Vaporfly thought to think, well, I'll give out Jonathan's PR. I know it's 29:43 for 10,000 meters. Is that correct, John? I say I know it.
That's right. 2013 Mount Sac Relays.
And he also ran 29:59 the year before. So he's a 2-time sub-30 guy. Wasn't a one-off. Now, what about 5,000 or 3,000?
5,000, 1425, indoors at BU, so apply whatever conversion you want to apply there. 3K was 824. I think that might have been from the Dartmouth track, though. I could have run faster if I got a good shot at that. I need to look up my Tifa's
Okay,
profile.
so I ran this 29:43 through the Macmillan calculator, John. It's equivalent to a 2:19:18 marathon. Now, I'm assuming Macmillan hasn't updated his calculator for the Vaporflies. You put on a Vaporfly, John, you're 2:17 easily. So, 2:18 easily. John, should we pay for you to have a year-long, maybe 2-year-long sabbatical? I mean, shit, you can still train and run for Let's Run, but we give you like a $25,000 cash bonus if you qualify for the trials and agree to be drug tested once a week.
$25,000 bonus for making the trials. At this point, it would take me so long to get back. Like, I had to work my ass off to get in 29:43 shape. It would take me so long just to get back at that level. And I'm 28 years old now. It's not like I still have time, but I might need more than a year to get to a trials qualifier.
That's why I said 2 years. 1 year to get back into training fitness, and then.
But then I wouldn't be able to do, if I'm just taking a sabbatical, I wouldn't be able to do my job. I love my job.
No, I figured out you have time. It only takes you 3 hours a day to run, so if that.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think I spend more time working than you think, Robert, because I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, I have all this stuff to do and I have commitments, and it always seems like you're like, oh, you work from home. You would think like it's easy, and I guess maybe I'm not as driven as some other people who hold down a full-time job and run all this elite stuff, but it's hard. I don't know. I have other stuff to do. I like to watch football. I like to do stuff on the weekends. Like
that's the problem, John. First of all, yeah, you don't have time.
My priorities are out of whack.
Yeah, sports takes up a lot of time, because I realized that when I used to do Let's Run and Cornell at the same time somehow. Obviously, our coverage on Let's Run wasn't as in depth as it is now. People are like, "Oh, don't you have much more time?" I'm like, "No, I have less time." Like, why? Because I'm like, well, I spend more time watching sports now than I used to at actually track practice.
I got a money-making idea for John, and
feed me the tip jar. That's the money-making idea.
Oh yes, everybody, tips. Holiday season is here. Tip jar right now. Hit the tip jar. We'll give John his tips before the end of the year. But also, John, you can start a consulting business for kids who come from overseas here, like learn American sports.
Yeah, don't be like me. I could have been a Major League Baseball player if I had just learned the fundamentals.
But I don't know if foreign parents or like American parents will do anything for their kids, athletic success. So, speaking of kids' athletic success, we're going to have the high school national champion Josh Methner on the show next week. So look forward to that. Guys, anything else from this one?
No, I think happy holidays. Oh, I guess, no, this won't be, well, we got to figure out when we're recording next week. I think we need to record before Christmas, because after Christmas, I'm going to England to see Brighton kick some ass. So, probably record on Monday. So this won't be our last. We'll have another one to get you through the holiday period, but this will get you through your shopping. Again, check out, if you want a great gift idea, Amazon gift card, amazon.com/letsrun. You get $50 and $15 for yourself.
Letsrun.com/Amazon.
I should have thought, I'm like, Amazon gave us this link at the end of it? Or is like, that's crazy. No, letsrun.com/Amazon. I apologize. And also Normatec, they make great recovery sleeves, or the inflatable sleeves on your legs. So check those out as well.
Guys, also the podcast has a new URL. podcast.letsrun.com. If you want to give us feedback, 844-LETS-RUN, option 7. If you want to be on the podcast. Come on, we need holiday people calling in. But also you can leave us feedback. I'm going to pay for the upgrade on the host. So you can leave feedback right there on podcast.letsrun.com. It'll make it easier. It'll make it easier. But also, we really want the feedback on Apple iTunes. 5 stars. I'm the father, for the father, or being the father, for the Son, and the Holy Ghost, Weldon Johnson, signing off.